Awesome. Welcome everybody to day one of Foundations of Programming. Thank you guys for being here. We have a nice little group. We tend to average between 5 to 8 people in Foundations of Programming, so this is kind of what was expected. Thank you guys for being here. Um, this group is going to be a mixture of people who have either been accepted yet, or haven't been accepted yet, or in the process of it, or have already been accepted into either the immersive program or the DevOps or evening and weekend, right? I saw questions, in the chat about, what is this program for? And not only is for the eventual platoon, but also supplemental information for anybody else aiming to do any of our curriculum. Um, yeah, as the name states, it is a foundation course. So this course is meant to get you prepared for any one of our programs. Which when you guys end up starting your programs, you're going to end up realizing how difficult the programs are. And the reason for that is because it is a boot camp, right? So we try to leave all the extra fluff that you might see if you or to get a 4 year degree in computer science or software development. And we focus on the meat and potatoes, make sure that we get you running and straight into the workforce as soon as possible after graduation. And because of that, we try to do it in such a short time. So it's going to feel like a fire hose of information. So Foundations of Programming was created to hopefully alleviate that feeling of being overwhelmed with information and better prepare you for the first month or two of your time in our program. Um, just a show of hands here, who here is taking part of Venture Platoon within the next month? One, two. I see Michael, Dominic. Okay. It seems like for the most part, everyone here is a Venture Platoon. We might have one or two here that might be DevOps or even a weekend, but with a Venture Platoon starting off, right? Um, One of the hardest part about the immersive program is the very first assessment that you're going to be administered, right? This assessment is the object-oriented programming. Up to this point, you probably seen nothing about objects or classes. You may have seen it during your time trying to learn some coding. Um, that assessment tends to be the assessment that gives our student the most problems. So foundation programming helps to get you better prepared for that. We do have an intensive or an extensive curriculum for object-oriented programming throughout foundation programming. So you'll get some good practice, and then once you encounter it in the immersive program, you won't feel like you're struggling as much as the regular students. That's not to say that you wouldn't be successful if you didn't come through this program, but it helps alleviate that workload, right? What you're going to find is the reason for it being called immersive is because it requires so many hours through the day to ensure that you are successful in what's being taught to you. So it's very difficult, and I've seen it. People try to balance a full-time job or jobs during the immersive program, but it's going to be very difficult if you try to shift your focus, right? So we go through the foundation programming course to better prepare you for that and increase our success rates, right? Typically, um, the first assessment has the highest fail rates, right, compared to every other assessment. And a big part of that has to do with the fact that it's the first one, right? It's the first one. Some of you guys maybe started coding 3 months ago. Some of you started 3 weeks ago at the start of the guided application program. So some of us are at different stages, but it is the first assessment, right? You probably know the basics of either JavaScript or Python. You know how to start for loop and manipulate some data structures. But how to actually apply it into software design and being able to use it in objects and classes and seeing how it connects together can be a difficult concept for some of us. So it tends to have the highest failure rate. So we want to make sure that you guys are better prepared for that, right? So let's go ahead and jump into our slides. So in the Foundation Programming Slack channel, you should find a couple of links, right? One of the links that you have is a Zoom link, which is what you guys used to get here. And the other one is going to be the class schedule. So let me go ahead and drop it in the chat just in case for those of you who aren't in the Slack channel just yet. Go ahead and click that link in the chat. That's going to open up a schedule.
Hey Roger, it says I need access.
Oh, okay. Stand by. Uh, let's see, share. Let's see.
I also need access. Daniel Bittner,
Stand by. Let me see.
Bettner.
This always happen. I don't know why. Let's see.
I requested access just now to make it easier.
Okay. Yeah. Every time I have this class, this happens. Uh, viewer, accept all. You guys should all be viewers now. I'll make sure I update this later. I do apologize for that. But
Yep,
it
I
happens
can see
every
it now.
single time.
I still
Awesome.
need access.
Who was that?
Justin, right here.
Justin Moore. Let's see.
Requested just to be.
I don't see you here. Request access again, just in case. What's your email address? Or, never mind, don't answer that.
Hey, Roger, this is Andy. I requested access quite a while ago.
I think I just gave you access. You have access, Andy. Refresh your page. I see Justin Moore now. Okay. And Andy, do you have access now?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Thank you.
All right, right on.
I'm
So
in.
this is gonna all right, right on. This is gonna be your class schedule, right? We should all be. I'm not sharing my screen yet. I'll just share it just in case. But this is what you should be looking at. This is gonna be the class schedule. Now, this schedule is subject to change, not about the days of class, but more about what's being taught in class. And reason for that is because every class that I get is usually at a very different tempo. I've gotten some, absolute studs that just like were very receptive to the curriculum, and we were flying through the lecture. So we were like ahead of schedule. Or other classes, we seem to have struggled more, so I slow it down, right? So this is what's going to be taught to you. It is kind of what the pace should look like, but for the most part, we might cover some topics a little bit earlier than what the schedule shows here. But we'll just talk real quick through what's going to be covered. Today is a fairly simple day. It's mainly just the introduction to our program. Installfest used to be part of day one for foundation programming. Guillermo has been amazing on taking up that job and helping you guys through the Installfest during the pre-work. I'm aware that we have a couple people here that probably have not done the Installfest yet, so we will work together afterwards. And then we'll talk about some practices or things that you should be doing to be successful with learning. Tomorrow, which we'll probably end up touching up on today as well, is going to be Terminal, Git, and GitHub. Once again, Guillermo has started taking some of this workload off of me and start implementing this during the pre-work weekend calls. So some of this might feel a little redundant for you guys, but we'll talk about GitHub and how to use it, how to create repositories, and then how to link your GitHub to your Git on your computer because they are two different things. Um, and then where the real actual curriculum kind of starts, it's going to be on how the internet works in HTML, right? That's Wednesday, but we'll more than likely start it tomorrow. And that's going to be, talking about, it's very front end oriented. I don't know how the pre-work still looks like yet. I'm assuming that you guys got like a document with like work to do between now and the Adventure Platoon. When I came through Uniform Platoon, through Code Platoon, we had HTML and CSS to do during the pre-work. I'm assuming it's fairly similar to that still. But yeah, I kind of skipped over it, but quick background on me for those of you who don't know me that didn't come through Guide Application or Intro to Coding. My name is Rogelio, but I go by Roger. I am a United States Army veteran, so I served 8 years as a combat engineer. Um, and then when I transitioned, I came to Platoon just like you guys who are sitting here. Came to the exact same program. I'm a graduate from Uniform Platoon. Upon graduating, I volunteered as a teacher assistant. Um, luckily, an opening opened up specifically this course where the instructor had a step out for whatever reason, and I filled in temporarily. They were very impressed with my performance, and I was offered a contracted job here with Platoon, and I've been instructor ever since. So I've been teaching the class for the better part about a year and a half to 2 years now. So it's not the first time I teach this class. I've had one of you guys come through and see many of the people come through here be successful. I don't think any student that's come through Platoon Foundation of Programming has failed. So every student I've had through here has made it through the immersive program, was very successful. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Typically, these same students, they hit me up like week 2, week 3. They're like Roger, like you're absolutely right, like about object-oriented programming or the assessment. Like I understand what you meant. Um, I've had great comments, great results thanks to this program. So you guys should be learning a lot today or this month, right? But yeah, so tomorrow we'll probably start HTML, right? And we'll get to see how we can start coding some pages, right? Talking about the structure of it. We'll add some CSS, and you'll learn more about this stuff. CSS being like kind of the styling of the web pages. For those of you who started with JavaScript or have some familiarity with JavaScript, we'll be using JavaScript to make our web pages interactive, right? After all this, we'll start touching on APIs, application programming interfaces, and how they can, help our web applications kind of have additional functionality. We'll talk more about that. An example of APIs are kind of like, when you, sign up for something and you get an automatic email by whatever business that you signed up for, or if you schedule an appointment, that's an API, right? There's different APIs that do different things for us. So we'll talk about how APIs work and how you guys can use them. We'll talk about CRUD apps, pretty much just making our web pages dynamic. We'll get a small introduction to a Python, right? So we'll have a quick Python crash course. This was originally mainly for people who started off with JavaScript and they needed to know Python so we can dive deep into object-oriented programming. Nowadays, the students I'm getting through Foundation of Programming start with Python and know less of JavaScript. So what I believe that we'll have the most issue with during this class will be for those of you who know a little JavaScript, trying to use JavaScript during this week. But after the Python crash course, we're going to jump straight into classes and objects and talk about object-oriented programming. If you miss any class throughout this month, I would avoid missing the object-oriented programming section of the course, just to make sure that you actually get something out of that. That's the biggest part for this course. So make sure if you can avoid missing some days during next week, start the middle of next week to the third week, right? All this from this Thursday, the 15th to the 23rd, all this is object-oriented programming, right? So it's a big chunk of what we do. And then finally, once we make it through object-oriented programming and Python, we're going to jump into data structures and data algorithms, right? So we'll talk about big O notation. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it's how we identify or rate how efficient your code may be, right? So if you heard the terms time complexity or space complexity, right? We'll start talking about how your code is working, what increases time complexity or space complexity, and what decreases it. There's a lot of ways to determine what's good code and what's bad code. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll jump into, some common problem solving formulas or, methods to solve some of these challenges that you guys might be encountering, right? So I know I got some questions about like the coder bot challenges, like we weren't taught this for the intro to coding course and stuff like that, right? And a lot of these skills come from problem solving, right? Being exposed to problems or situations where you have to come up with a solution, right? So breaking a problem into smaller problems and thinking critically. So we'll be doing a lot of that for the last week. Um, Nothing too crazy, just enough to get your feet wet and get you to start thinking with that problem solving mindset. And then by the end of it, we used to do a speed run through the coder bite challenges. That was before it was switched from 12 to 3. Before it used to be 12 exercises that you had to complete for your part 2 application. But now it's only 3 of them. So we're probably not going to hit the pre-work challenge speed run. We'll probably take up that day and expand on some other subject that we might have already covered or needs touching up again. And that'll be the entirety of our course. So you'll see a little bit of front end, not much about back end, mainly because you'll have to get into databases or the framework that we're going to be using, right? But we'll talk about how we can use object-oriented programming, which is going to tie into working with your back end once you get into the immersive program. So it's still very helpful, and it is the first thing you're going to be tested on when going into the immersive program, right? So that's what it's looking like. As you guys already know, class will start at 5:30. It's going to go up to 9. We will take a 10-minute break at every hour on the hour. Attendance is not mandatory, right? So I do understand if you guys have appointments or you're busy, the only thing I ask is please let me know ahead of time, like, hey, Roger, like I won't be here today. You don't have to give me a thorough explanation, just let me know, right? So I'm not kind of waiting for you or whatever. And I don't like being ghosted. That's it. Just let me know. No hard feelings. If you guys decide, hey, I want to move forward on my own, that's cool. Or hey, work picked up, or I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I can no longer dedicate my time to this course. The only thing I ask, don't ghost me. Just let me know, and I'll see you when I see you, right? So that's all I ask from you guys. Depending on how receptive you guys are doing or being with the information will determine how much time we spend on these subjects, if we can move forward or not, or if you guys need extra help. There'll be some points where I'll break up into rooms where I'll pair you up with a buddy and you guys will code along, and then I'll bounce between rooms and help you guys individually if needed. Our entire curriculum is going to be off of slides and what I know in my head, right? So if you're wondering, like, is there a repository that has all the information? There is not. I am in the process of putting this on a repository in case I ever need to do a left seat, right seat with my, my replacement in the future. But everything that we'll be covering is going to be via the slides. So we'll go to the slideshow. Every part, I'll stop. We'll talk about stuff. The repository is very minimal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for the most part, if you want to know what we're going to be talking about during whatever day, then you're going to want to look at the slides and follow along, right? So the slides, where can they be found? So as you already saw, this is our schedule. All the slides are going to be in the respective lesson. So for example, for lesson 0, you'll see that it's a hyperlink. You want to click that and it'll open up the slideshow. You'll click that and it'll open it up for you, right? So if you're one of those people that like to follow along, you can do it this way. If not, I will be sharing it on my screen whenever we're talking about. So no stress there. Every class will be recorded. So in the event you miss a couple lessons and you want to make sure that you check, what you missed, they will be added to the Slack channel. And additionally, the video will be added to the calendar with, a hyperlink to link you straight to the video. So in case you can't find it on the Slack channel or buried within messages, you can always check the calendar and you'll find the most latest video. The videos, when will they be uploaded? They will be uploaded the same night, but they probably won't be ready until the next morning. Typically because it takes me about an hour to download the videos. They are 3 hours long, so it takes a while for it to download. 45 minutes to an hour, depends how much we recorded. And then to upload them on YouTube, it takes its own time too. It'll upload it. It'll take about 15 minutes to upload, and then it'll be like on some pretty bad quality. And if you want to see it in high definition, you'll have to wait like an additional hour. It just takes a while to make sure it uploads correctly. I don't know why. Maybe my internet sucks. But Blink Spectrum. All right, but so if you wanted to see the video, you want to actually read the codes on my screen with good quality, then you're gonna want to wait until the next morning. If you have any questions, stop me. Come off the mic. Let me know. Hey, Roger. Before we move forward, I had a question on this. Typically, what I'll do is, I'll kind of reiterate your question to make sure everyone heard it, and then I will answer it accordingly. If at any point there's something I do not know, I will make sure I get the answer for you. Now, for the actual curriculum itself, the link to the curriculum can be found on the Slack channel, or what you can also do is you can click here on the here word. It will have a hyperlink to the GitHub repository on our GitHub. Right, this is the repository that you're going to need for the class. I'm gonna open up a couple of these, and you will see how minimal this is. But any of the lessons or exercises we do will be found on the repository. There'll be no lessons on the slideshow. I'm gonna go ahead and expand on this a little bit. But once you copy the curriculum to your VS Code, and I'll show you guys how we're gonna do that. You should have it something like this, right? Today's lesson 00. Nothing too crazy. Today was mainly like install fairs, introduction, and whatnot. But as you see, for example, if we go to lesson 2, you'll have like certain assignments, files already created with certain images. These will pertain to whatever exercise we're doing. Intro CSS has its own exercises, like box model is its own exercise, colors is one, practice layouts is another. So all the exercises we'll be doing, they'll be found on the repository. And we'll talk about how this is done in a little bit. Do you have any questions so far? I feel like I've been doing a lot of information dump. No questions at all. All right. Well, English is my second language, so I do want to say if at any point you don't understand something I said, or it spelled way too fast or slurred my words, please stop me and ask me to repeat it. I will not take offense. I want to make sure that you guys understand everything that's being covered. All right. Cool. So, who here have not done the install phase? And I know it's going to be a couple. I see Dominic. Hold on, give me a second. My laptop is acting up. Hello? Can you guys see me? Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I
All
still
right, I'm
got
sorry.
you.
Sorry for that. I don't know what happened. My screen disconnected. I got 3 screens here, and the HDMI cable turned off. But I saw one hand. I saw someone say they didn't. I think it was Dominic, Marshall. Who else has not done the install phase?
I haven't done it on the computer I'm using.
Okay. I recommend for those of you who I see Daniel, and I know for some of you it's expected because I know we're still working through the lab technical assessment, and that's okay. So install fest is something that you're going to require for the immersive program, right? So the reason why we have the install fest is because we want to make sure everyone is working on something very similar, a similar platform. So we're not teaching 2 different things, right? And we typically try to work with Linux, right? So for those of you who are on Windows, you'll have a different installation than someone who is on Mac. And there's a couple of things that you're going to have to install. So this can be found either here on the README for the repository.
Your screen share just shows a blank
Oh.
page.
Thank you for that. We should be seeing this. Are you guys seeing my?
There we go.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you guys need the install phase link, it can be found in lesson 0. you'll see here the link to the GitHub install fest. You will also be able to find it within the Slack channel. For those of you who need it now, I will drop it anyways, just for the sake of that everyone has a link. Class schedule, install office. And I'm gonna click it real quick so we can see what it looks like. For the most part, some of you guys, I think it's like half and half. But there's the link to install fest. I'm gonna go to it now. It's going to take you to a different repository, right? Which is going to have a different path depending on what you're using. You're going to read the initial README here that talks about how to navigate through your terminal. And then after today's class, you'll have somewhat of an idea of how to navigate through a terminal as well. But once you get to the very bottom, you're going to select whether you're doing Mac, Windows, or if you already have some kind of Linux machine. For most of you, you'll probably just be Mac or Windows. I did the Windows one. I had to install it on this laptop as well, right? There's a couple things I'll talk about that maybe aren't updated, but you're going to do it from top to bottom, right? The install of it should be done in order. Before you start, you want to make sure that you have ran your most recent Windows update, right? So if you're the type of person that ignores the notification on your laptop to install an update, make sure you update everything before you move forward with anything else. Right, it's going to take you from start to finish from the terminal. How to install the Linux machine using the command weasel install. So all these will be fairly simple. What you'll do is you'll end up opening up Windows PowerShell, right-clicking it and running it as administrator. You should end up with something very similar to this, right? So it'll bring you up to your terminal. And then what you'll do is you'll run through the commands from top to bottom, right? It'll prompt you to create a username, password, and then literally you just follow it from top to bottom. What you might find some issues in will probably be here, the Python virtual environment. This is, if you try to type in this, you might get error, because you don't have Python 3.10 installed. You're going to install the latest Python when you install Python. Where's it at? Yeah, when you run this command, it's going to install the latest Python, which is going to be 3.12. So this might not run. If it doesn't run, just change this to 3.12, and it'll install the virtual environment module for you. You'll continue with this the instructions, and then the next time you might run into an issue will be the alias. The alias, if you're on Windows and you're trying to change the alias for your Python 3 and pip3, what I recommend is visit the Linux method. The Linux method tells you to run a different file, which is going to be the bash rc, and then this is where you do the alias. The alias pretty much is whenever you run your Python files, or many of your Python files, or when you run the pip, you don't have to add the extra 3. It's not mandatory. It's just kind of annoying having to put the 3 every single time you type in Python. So you essentially create an alias to alleviate yourself from having to type in 3 every single time. But that's all that really is. All right. But besides that, once you get through the entire installation, your machine should be properly installed. The biggest thing that the reason why I told you guys to ensure you guys go through install fest is because you want to use git clone, right? And now what is git clone? So for those of you who attended the guided application program, what we used was code spaces, right? But code spaces was nice for a starter program. You know, for those of you who tried to dabble a little bit in code and weren't sure what you wanted to do. But for those of you who are moving forward with the Adventure Platoon, you want to make sure this is set up for how the program is going to require you for it. And what we're going to do is going to be cloning repositories from GitHub down to your computer, right? Or before it was on GitHub already. Codespaces is a part of GitHub, and it was easy to just open up some kind of repository on there. We want to bring down this repository from GitHub onto our computer. And to do that, we want to leverage the commands from Git, right? So you're going to want to get up to the Git section at least. I mean, you want to do all of it ideally, right? But you won't be able to run the git clone command unless you install Git into your Linux subsystem. And with that in mind, we're going to move forward with how we're going to bring down this repository onto our computer. So for those of you who have not done install fest yet, don't worry about it. We'll cover it in a little bit together in a separate room. But for those of you who have already done the install fest, what you want to do is you want to navigate to a folder where you're going to want to copy a version of the repository for Foundations of Programming, right? I already made a clone for y'all's class that I'm going to be using. But essentially, you're going to find somewhere on your directories of where you want to have this. And if you're not confident with working with directories yet, I'll show you guys in a little bit. But essentially, you're going to create a folder, which is using the mkdir command, and you can just name it like FOP, right? And if this seems out of scope right now, that's okay. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. But once you find a directory that you want to use to have your work, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the curriculum for Foundations of Programming, and you're going to want to copy the link for it, right? And what in the heck happened here? Okay, there we go. I was lost. I was like, no way, somebody's deleted the entire schedule. I'm pretty sure I gave you guys viewer action, not editor. But yeah, so here is the repository for Foundations of Programming. For those of you familiar with code spaces, whenever you guys copy the guide application program repo, you came to this big green button, right? And you click the copy URL to clipboard, right? You use this to open up the repository on code spaces. But now what you're going to do differently here once you have the install phase complete is in your terminal, once you have the location of where you want to, have your work, all you're going to do is type in git clone and then copy and paste the link, right? 3 different words, git clone, and then the third would be the link itself. And once you run this, what you'll see is that it will copy and paste the repository down to your computer, right? You essentially just download the repository to your computer. And you're going to be doing this for pretty much everything during the immersive program as well, or moving forward whenever you want to bring down a GitHub repository to your local machine, right? And now if I list out my folders here, I see that I have the folders for FOP. Let me go ahead and delete these. Pretty sure FOP. There we go. We'll come back to the terminal and we'll elaborate more on these in the commands that I used. I just want to make sure for those of you who already attended the pre-work sessions with Guillermo and had some experience working with the terminal, you can go ahead and just copy the curriculum. But we're going to take a quick pause on this and we're going to move forward with today's talk. All right. So let's go ahead and actually get into today's slideshow. Thank you guys for being here. These slides are a little outdated, so bear with me. I do this part-time, so I don't always have time to upload everything or update it, right? So bear with me. For the most part, 95% of all the slides are relevant. As we mentioned, class is from Monday to Friday from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Attendance is not absolutely mandatory. I'm not going to drop you if you miss a week and then come back the remainder of the time. I understand. I have, we're all adults. We have families, responsibilities, right? There is no hard deadlines for any assignments. I'm not going to grade you on anything. But what will happen more than likely is we might start an assignment. We might get halfway through it, and then I'll just let you know, hey, make sure you guys work on this. We're gonna cover it tomorrow during the start of class, right? And if you didn't do it, that's fine. I'm not gonna grade you for it, but just know that we will go through it the next day. So if you don't want a spoiler, I would try to make sure kind of finish it beforehand. If not, then that's okay too. But typically that's what would happen, right? We'll start an assignment if it's like a very difficult assignment or you guys are struggling, but it's a very good assignment for practice. I'll make sure I cover it or how I would approach uh whatever problem may be. If you have any questions about anything, absolutely anything, whether it's from the pre-work, right? Whether it's if you're started with JavaScript and have questions about how it translates to Python or vice versa, ask me, right? The only thing I ask is that if I tell you it's out of scope or it's too advanced for the conversation, then all I ask is respect that. I had some people kind of give me some issues with that recently about trying to bring things that are completely out of our level and try to talk about it, right? And the reason I say that is because we have people here who just started coding 3 weeks ago, where some of you might have 6 months of experience, right? So, or some of you might have been doing this for a while on your own. I've had people who were web developers already, but they wanted a different approach to this and come through a boot camp or some kind of certification and leverage the tools that come with Platoon and the connections. All I ask is understand that not everyone is at the same level. And if you guys have anything you guys want to discuss that does not pertain to where we're talking about, and I tell you it's out of scope, we can always go to a room, you and I, and we can talk about it, and I can give you my thought process about it, or we can just discuss code, right? So nothing's on the table. Just understand that if you're talking about using a Django REST framework and whatnot, that's not part of the curriculum, right? So and that's way too advanced for now. Just know that. We will make time at the end of class for any questions you guys have, right? As I mentioned to you, if there's something that you guys ask me and I don't know the answer for it, I'll tell you, give me a bit and I'll get you an answer by the end of class. I tend to forget sometimes, so do remind me, hey Roger, I want to ask, did you get an answer to that question from earlier? And then I'll let you know. All right. So the objective of Foundations of Programming is to prepare you students, prepare you guys for the immersive program. Ensure that you guys have everything you need to be successful once you guys get into the immersive program, right? When I went through, and this is not for everybody, right? We all learn a little bit different. When I went through, I was coding till like 2 a.m. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. sometimes, and then I would go to sleep, wake up next morning, and do it all over again, right? I was getting to a point where like I was looking at my screen, I didn't even know what the heck I was reading anymore. But that was just how much work I was putting into the class, right? Some of us can understand the material a little faster than others. Some of us can't, right? So a lot of times it's a lot of information. It's very overwhelming for the average person. So we want to make sure that when you guys get to the immersive program, it's not the first time you're seeing it. The machine setup, we talked about that. Guillermo probably went through with some of you guys. For those of you who have not done it, we can make some time today and I'll go through it with you guys. For the sake of that, I'll probably cut class a little shorter than usual. So that way we can actually make sure everyone's on the same page. And I'm not going past time for those of you who have families and responsibilities, right? I want to make sure we all still get out at 9. All right. This is old. This is old. All right. So running JavaScript and Python files and VS Code. So some of you guys started in JavaScript, right? And some of you guys started in Python. But the way that you run Python files and JavaScript files are 2 different ways, right? So here is my repository. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new file within lesson 0. And I'm gonna call it example.js, right? And the way that you end a file typically correlates with what type of file it is, right? For those of you who start with Python, you're probably familiar with .py, right? That's how we usually name a Python file. That's how your computer knows what type of file it's working with. For the JavaScript files, you're going to end it with .js. Now, for those of you who have not gone through the install phase and you have VS Code or you haven't installed Node, you might not be able to run a JavaScript file. If you don't have like any kind of extensions, you might have some issues, but don't worry, we'll get to that. But here I'm gonna add some demo code console.log. Hello, foundations of programming. Right. Now there's different ways you can run code in VS Code. For Python, you'll typically have the play button at the top right. You might be tempted to press the run button up here and run without debugging. And I don't know why this is showing for me here, but you might be tempted also to right click on the file and press run. It should show on the Python file, but I don't know why on the JS it doesn't show it. And there's different ways to run code, right? What you're going to do throughout your time here in foundation programming and moving forward is you want to do everything through the terminal, right? Or essentially your shell, right? You don't want to do, don't leverage the GUI for running your Python file. And the reason we do that is to ensure that you get comfortable working with your terminal and Linux commands. But usually the way it's going to work is inside your terminal, you want to make sure that you are in the location of where the file you're trying to run is at, right? And to figure out where you are at, you can use the command pwd, which stands for print working directory, which you can already see that from here, but you'll see where you are in your directories, right? This should look fairly similar to your documents, your download file path, right? Here I am within home. I am in my user folder for Roger, right? I am within my Platoon folder inside of FOP, inside of FOP summer 2025, and I am currently at the level of lesson 00, right? Within lesson 00, I got 2 files. And to see what kind of files I have in the current directory I'm located at, I'm going to use the ls command, right? Which stands for lists, right? And I'm going to list out the files within the current working directory that I am in. And I got 2 files, which is the readme and the example.js file, which reflects to the directory panel on the left side of my VS Code, right? I can see here, I am currently within the location I'm supposed to be at. Now, there's 2 ways to run the files. Ideally, you'd rather just be in the location of where your file is that you're trying to run. And the reason for that is because if you aren't in the location of the file you're trying to run and you try to run it, you have to specify where this file is located at, right? You have to specify it. Right now, because I am currently in the same location where the file I'm trying to run is at, the way I'm going to run this JavaScript file is by using the command node, right? Node space followed by the name of the file that I'm trying to run, which is example.js. And I didn't save it, so it didn't want to run it. But let me go ahead and run it again. And there we go. I'm seeing the output of my JavaScript file. So I was able to specify that I want to run this JavaScript file, right? So I require the command of node. Notice that I am in the same directory of where this file is located at. Now, if I wasn't there, what would happen is I would have to specify the location of where this file is located at. For example, I would have to specify that I want to run the inside of the folder summer 2025. I'm going to go in here and I want to go into the folder for lesson 00 and I want to run example.js. And then it runs that file, right? Because I'm currently not within it, right? Notice that I am currently at a different part of my directory. Whereas before I was where lesson 00 was at and I had access to the file. But I went ahead and I moved out of that directory. I'm 2 levels up. And to specify the file that I want to run, I have to give it a deliberate file path. And that's very important, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to try to run a file that you're working on, and in your terminal, you're not in the location of that file. And what you'll see, if I try to run example.js without a file path, I'm going to get an error, right? It says cannot find the module of example.js, right? And the reason for that is because the folder I am in is 2 levels up. I am inside Platoon /FOP. But where is example.js? Example.js is within the FOP folder inside of FOP Summer 2025 and inside lesson 00, right? So where the file I'm trying to run is different from where I am located at, right? So when I try to run this file, if I'm not within the working directory of that file, I'm going to get an error, right? So it's very important to understand where you are in your terminal to run your files. Let me go ahead and go into that folder. And we'll talk about these commands and how they work in a little bit. There we go. I'm now back within the lesson 00 directory. And once again, I'm going to run example.js and it should work. There you go. Right. So when running your file, if it's a JavaScript file, you want to use node. And it's also important to understand where you are in your directory. Now, let me go ahead and create a Python file. I'm going to call this example.py. This is my Python file. All right, I went ahead and created a new Python file in the same location example.js is. But this time I ended it with .py. It is a completely different file. Now, if I want to run my Python file, I would use Python and then the name of example.py. All right, hello, this is my Python file. Right. Now, if you did not completely install Fast the correct way, and you missed creating an alias, what's going to happen when you try to run this command is you're going to get an error. It's going to say that it doesn't recognize the module you're trying to use. Like, what is Python? Like, I don't know what Python is. Because by default, you're supposed to call Python 3. Right? And then it's going to run it. And it'll work if I use either or. But the README creates an alias for you, so you don't have to keep typing that 3. And it sounds like that's not a big deal, Roger. Like, it's just a 3. Why does that really matter? Should I be worried? No, you don't have to worry about it. You can do it. But you're going to be running this command very, very, very often to run your file. So the alias just helps so you save a little split of a second. But yeah, so this is how you run your 2 different files. Your JavaScript file or your Python file. You do not want to use the play button. You don't want to use the run button on your taskbars. You want to navigate through your code using your terminal, right? So it might take a while to get used to, but it'll come with practice. Do I got any questions so far? All right. So that was how we're going to run the JavaScript and Python files in VS Code. This is what I was trying to show you guys, this run code. It might be an extension if I'm being honest. Don't use this. All right, learn how to code. You all have a different story, right? Some of you might have started months ago. Some of you guys started weeks ago. Some of you guys might have a tech job. You probably touching code. Everyone comes from a different place with a different story. When I started coding, I didn't know where to start, right? I didn't know what programming language I needed. Initially, what I really wanted to do was make video games, right? Because I'm a nerd at heart, and I wanted to make video games. I knew that you needed to code, but I didn't know what code I needed, right? So I went to my library. I was stationed in Fort Bragg when I was still in the service. And I went to the Fort Bragg library and I got 7 different books, which was the limit of how many books I can get. And every single one was some kind of different programming book. You know, C#, C++, Java, JavaScript, Python, HTML, CSS. It was a different programming book, and I didn't know where to start. Funny enough, the first book I picked up was the one I stuck with, which was the Python book, right? It was the Python Crash Course. It's the book I tend to recommend people when they start learning how to code. This is a book that I use to start coding. And I learned to code for about 6 months on my own. I tried different apps, right? Some of them learn differently. There's an app called Mimo. or Mimi, I think. I don't know if you guys have heard of that app. It's like a Duolingo for coding, right? You can go through, run some exercises, and it'll remind you to make sure you do your hours or your times to code. Um, and and the reason why apps like that are helpful is because they use what we call spaced repetition, right? Which is also something that all of you should be somewhat familiar with, right? For those of you, for the most part, it should be every single one of you guys, right? Whether you have a high school degree or a GED, you've been through some kind of school, right? Some kind of education system. And what should sound somewhat familiar is maybe using flashcards, right? If you guys recall, whether you're in middle school or high school and you guys were studying for a test, you create flashcards with, a question in the front and then the name in the back to help you practice. That was spaced repetition, right? So you've kind of already experienced this. And the reason why we're talking about this is because spaced repetition is a good way to ensure you are learning how to code. Uh, and the way that I recommend is by using Anki, right? Anki is essentially a software that replicates flashcards, right? They are digital flashcards. If you like to have, hard flashcards in hand, you guys can do that. If you guys have ever used Quizlet, Quizlet has those flashcards, right? You have like the front and back, and you get to study it, right? I enjoyed Anki. I would show you my Anki decks, but unfortunately, this is a new laptop. I just got it like 2 days ago. So I don't have any Anki decks on this computer. They are in my other computer. I'm go ahead and run it real quick. You guys should all be seeing what Anki looks like. I downloaded to ensure I can show you what it looks like. It's free. You just Google Anki and you can download it. Nowadays, stuff like Quizlet charges you a membership to even use their flashcard system, if I'm correct. So Anki, it's free and you can use it. And what you'll do is you'll come here and you'll create a new deck by pressing the create deck button, and you can call it Python terminology, right? And then you can add cards to your deck, right? You'll have the front and the back. You can ask a question like, how many bytes is an integer? I believe it's 4 bytes, if I remember correctly. All right, 4 bytes, and then you add it. You can close it up once you're done adding your flashcards, and then when you're ready to study, you can put study now, and then you'll be prompted with your flashcard. You kind of just say it out loud to yourself. You show the answer. If you got it wrong, then you can put that it was like hard, or to see it again within 1 minute. If you're good, but you can see it again pretty soon, you can put the good section and see it within 10 minutes. Or if it was too easy, you don't want to see it within like 5 days. And the reason why you have like stuff like 5 days is because what happens whenever you open up Anki, it'll tell you what 20 flashcards you should study for that day. They'll be random, right? So what I recommend for you guys, as you guys are going through this journey, whether it's foundations of programming, the immersive course, this should be, for the most part, for most of you, new stuff, right? So using stuff like Anki can be very helpful. When you guys join the immersive program, class will be between the hours of 9 to 12. 12 hours. And it is a fire hose of information, right? From start to finish. They recommend you code along. But if you're like me, realistically, what's going to happen is as you attempt to code through the lecture, you're going to fumble your words. You're going to finger fumble and you're going to add typos. And as you guys already know, if you miss a quotation mark, if you add a quotation mark, you miss a colon, your code won't work. And then you're trying to figure out where the heck your code is going wrong. And if this happens during class, you'll get stuck in a certain section and the instructor will move along. He's already 2-3 sections ahead of you. You're still trying to work on something he covered earlier. Now you missed what was covered and you're falling behind. And now you can no longer follow along. And now you're stuck there, you're just watching, making sure that you can keep up. And once the next break comes, you ask for help. Typically the instructor will help you if you're, completely lost. But you have to understand that, for example, my class was 40 people. Right? Some classes are as small as 10. Depending on how many people are in your program, it's going to determine how much time we can spend on every single question. Right? It's going to come to a point where it's like he's going to tell you, hey, hold your question until the end of class, and then we'll handle it. So Anki is a nice tool that I enjoy using. So as you go through the curriculum, instead of fumbling around with your code trying to debug, you annotate keyword concepts, methods on your Anki deck, and then you just review them at the end of class. Right. So Anki, a very good way to create study material and to touch up every day. Right. It takes 10 minutes in the morning while you're taking your coffee. Open up your Anki deck, sip your coffee as you go through your flashcards, and then you're ready to go for the day. Right. And then what that's going to do is going to help you reset that learning curve and ensure that these important concepts stick a little better. Active recall is going to be your other helpful tip that I recommend. You see here, you have a picture of a duck, a rubber duck. Who knows what this is? What is it referencing? You guys ever seen this? The rubber duck method? All right, so what happens is when you guys are coding by yourself, what will end up happening is you'll end up getting tunnel vision, right? Almost like a horse with blinders, right? You will be getting tunnel vision with your code, and what's going to happen is you're going to overlook certain things, right? You might get hyper focused on certain parts of your code, and you're going to miss some things. Or you might not be able to understand something specific, right? A certain concept, right? And it's just not clicking right. Or your code is just too confusing. The problem's too confusing. A tip that I recommend for helping you learn how to code is active recall and using the rubber duck method. Talking to your rubber duck. A lot of people they'll have some kind of toy on their computer. I had it when I was going to the boot camp, right? Having a rubber duck by your computer. And if you ever at any point you are at a point where you just don't understand what's going on, what you do is you talk through your code through your out loud to your duck. Now, you don't need a duck to talk to your code, but it helps remind you when you see the duck there, hey, you know what? Let me just talk through my code, right? Let me talk through from top to bottom what the heck my code is doing or what it should be doing and what it's not, right? And we'll, 7 times out of 10, what'll happen is you'll realize where you went wrong. Like, oh, there it is, right? And you end up finding the issue in your code, or as you say it out loud to your rubber duck, you end up realizing where you went wrong, right? Where you weren't understanding the concept, and now you can understand why it wasn't working, right? Or a concept that was too difficult for it to click, right? It was too difficult for you to visualize how it works. As you talk about it out loud, it'll make a little bit more sense. So active recall and using the rubber ducky method is a great way to ensure that you can understand some more complex methods or functions, or just talk through what's going on with your code, especially if you're coding by yourself. And they say, yeah, I never heard this method. Yeah, it's a way of learning. Sometimes have you ever had that where you're talking to somebody about what something went wrong, and you're like mid conversation, you're like, oh my god, that's what it was, and then it kind of clicks of what happened or why something went wrong. That's what's happening there, right? So having a rubber ducky or someone to talk to can really help you solidify some of these points that might cause you more friction than others. I show you the Anki class demo. Resetting your forgetting curve every day. Who knows what the forgetting curve is? Right. So the forgetting curve is how soon you essentially forget stuff after you last seen it, right? If I showed you a concept today, every day or the more time that goes by, you forget more and more of it. Think of it kind of like when you wake up and you just had a dream, right? They say that within the first 7 minutes, you forget about 90% of your dream, which is why when people who are trying to do stuff like lucid dreaming or remember what their dreams are or find the meaning of their dreams, they end up having what is called a dream journal, where the moment they wake up, they immediately write down the details of their dream, right? It's kind of like that, right? That's your forgetting curve. And your forgetting curve is it's a big thing when learning something new. And I know I'm trying, having to explain to you guys how to learn stuff. We all learn differently, but this is a really big thing. What happen is you will be taught something, and then if you don't review it, you don't study it, or you don't see it again. If I try to ask you or tell you to do something, that same thing I taught you a week or 2 weeks ago, you won't remember a damn thing. You might remember parts of it, right? So resetting your forgetting curve every single day is important, and that's where Anki comes to play, right? Being able to just review your flashcards the next morning or the next day to ensure that the information that was taught to you is really solidified in your mind and you understand what you're learning. What you'll end up experiencing throughout the immersive program is that, and it's mainly because how it's structured, right? The first 2 weeks you'll really learn about Python and object-oriented programming. The next 2 weeks are very front end oriented, right? The next 2 weeks are about databases. And then the next week is going to be about the backend, right? And then after all this, you end up bringing it back together during full stack application week, and you learned front end 4 or 6 weeks ago, right? And if you didn't touch up on anything front end related, you're gonna forget a lot of it, and you're gonna find yourself trying to relearn certain key concepts when trying to put it together during full stack week, right? Or whenever we reach personal projects. Because every 2 weeks you're learning something new, right? Something big and major. And every single section is very intensive and that's a lot of information, right? A lot of different methods and concepts that you have to remember. And if you aren't resetting that forgetting curve as you are learning other new concepts, you're gonna find out that you're gonna have to touch up on a lot of the information. You're gonna be doing a lot of catch up, and do yourself a favor and make sure that you really understand what you're learning. So as the weeks go by, you're not just forgetting these things, right? This is really important when starting out, and it comes with everything, right? As you do it more often, you see it more frequently, you end up getting better at it. Certain concepts kind of stick. You become better at certain functions. You remember certain methods. And if you don't do it after a while, you end up losing, right? So make sure that you're resetting that forgetting curve. Right now, 6:33. Let's go ahead and take our first 10-minute break of tonight, and I will see you guys at 6:43. All right, welcome back, everybody. We just took our first break of the night. And I asked a couple of you guys, how long have you guys been coding? And I got a couple different answers. As you saw, some people have been doing this for a couple of years on and off. Some people for months. Others that we have in this class, we have that have been doing it for the past 3 weeks. So we are all on different timelines. We have had different journeys. Some of us have more experience than others. Which brings me to the next point here, right? 2 qualities that you must develop. The very first one is probably the most important one is you gotta put in the work. There is no if buts about it. Like you have to put in the work. There is absolutely no way that you can just show up to class. You sit through the lecture from 9 to 12 and think that is enough. There is no way. For those of you who went through guide application or intro to coding, you saw that firsthand, right? You saw the struggle of what it was trying to get through part 2 of the application process with just what was taught to you an accumulation of 27 hours, which is the total amount of time that the guide application program runs. There's no way, right? There's gonna be some times that you have to put in after class, right? Individual work because it's so much. It is a lot. Now, what you use to motivate you is going to be up to you. Whether it's the fact that you just love it, or if you are getting out of the military and this is like what you're betting your money on, then let that be your motivation, like how you're going to provide for yourself, right, after you leave the service. If your family is your motivation to ensure that you can provide for family, let it be that, right? And there's no better way to explain than, whatever work you put in is what you're gonna get out of it, right? If you are only putting in a couple hours a day, I guarantee you the person who's put in twice as much time is gonna be a little bit more efficient than you are. Now, it's not guaranteed how much of a difference, right? Some people learn different learning speeds, but you know, I believe hard work will beat talent every single day. So you gotta put in the work. You can't just sit here and watch some code and think that's gonna work. Um, who here is familiar with tutorial hell, right? Yeah, tutorial hell, right? For those of you who have never heard of that concept, it's when you're trying to learn something new, so you follow a tutorial on YouTube. Some dude shows you how to build a whole website in 6 hours, take you from start to finish. You finish after that 6 hours, probably end up being 8 or 9 because you pause it a lot and you read the screen and you kind of code, right? But you will spend all these hours following tutorial just to figure out that once you're done, you try to recreate everything that was taught to you, and you come to realize that you learned absolutely nothing. Right? So you can't watch someone code. You have to try it yourself. And you have to kind of jump straight into it. You have to fail. You have to go through your code not running, not no, it's not, you have bugs, you don't understand what the issues are, you have to go through the struggles, you have to, be in a position where you have to think critically and problem solve, decipher what the heck your code is doing, and then come up with a solution. That is the best way of learning. And I love it because I'll see someone do the mistakes that I did when I was learning the code, and people say, I don't know how you do it, like I didn't see it the first time, and it's 9 times out of 10 it's because I made the same mistake. I made the same mistake starting off too, right? The same mistakes that I'm catching in y'all's code is the same code that I did, the same mistakes I did that I had to get through and learn from, and now I no longer make the same mistake. Occasionally I might, but for the most part, I don't repeat those same mistakes. But it's because I went through the same struggles that you guys are going through, right? The same mistakes you guys make, the same bugs you guys are putting into your code, I did the exact same thing, or probably worse. All right, so you have to put in the work. And the next step is going to be the belief that you can do it, right? Super underrated for adults. As military, I'm assuming a large portion of you guys are military or veterans. Uh, I was a staff sergeant in the army, right? The people that I got in my teams, my squads, um, it's no secret, right? Most of the people that come into the military come from broken homes, right? Low income housing, right? Missing a father figure, um, abuse as a kid. We didn't get the same affection as other people had the ability to have, thanks to the fact that they had both parents in the household. And even then, even when you have both parents in the household, it's not always in good conditions. So as adults, we don't have the confidence that we can do something. No one told us that we can. If you were in the military, you probably, hopefully you had an NCO that believed in you to do good in the military, right? Andy, I see your comment. Right, so it's very important for us as adults to understand that we are able to do it. And I'm telling you guys right now, there's not a single person that I do not think couldn't code. Right, coding, I think every single person can code. It's as simple as talking, right? Because that's really what it is. Coding, computer languages is just a human language, but it's how you communicate with a computer. So I don't think there's a single person. If a person is able to speak one language, they're able to code, right? I'm a firm believer of that. So every single one of you guys have the ability to make it to the program, right? Be successful, and hopefully get into the workforce as a software engineer. So as you go through the program, you're going to find yourself at different points where you might feel like you don't belong, right? Imposter syndrome. You might feel like somehow you made it through here, and I'm sure you've heard the imposter syndrome multiple times throughout your life. Everyone likes to talk about it, but it's a real thing, especially during the boot camp. You're going to feel like maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Like this was a mistake. Like I don't know what I'm doing, and it's going to be usually on late nights of you coding, right? Especially once you're doing the object-oriented programming assessment, you're gonna feel it like, damn, like it's Sunday night. This is due tomorrow morning, and I'm only passing 10 out of like the 24 test cases that I have. Like, I am not cut out for this. Like, what am I doing? Like, obviously, like if I can't do this, like I'm useless. You're going to feel that. Uh, when I was going through my object-oriented programming assessment, that's exactly what happened. I got to Sunday morning, and I was passing roughly about 7 out of like the 24 test cases. All right, so what's gonna happen is you're going to be given an assessment, right? And it's gonna be it's gonna tell you straight up like what it should look like by the end of it. Like you need to code this. This is what this program should have, right? Now do it. You're going to create your program, and then what's gonna happen is you're gonna be given a test file, right? That you're going to run your code against, and we'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to do it here in the foundation of programming. We're going to create test cases, but for your assessment, you'll be giving test cases that your code has to pass. At a minimum, you have to pass, I believe, like 70% of the test cases. So it's your typical passing score. But I was passing like 7 out of 24, right? That's like 30%. A little over 30%. So I was struggling, and I didn't know what to do. Typically, what happens is you'll be given this assessment Friday after class is over. So 12 p.m. hits after the class is over. Assessment opens up, and you can start from then until Monday morning, 8 a.m. I think is when you have to submit it. Sunday morning hits, and I'm struggling. Like I completed my program, but when I run the code, it's not doing what it should be doing. And the reason for that you're going to find out is that there's multiple ways of how to do things. Not every single way is a great way, right? There's multiple ways to skin a cat. You guys heard that the saying before. That's really how code is, right? There's no right or wrong answer, but when it comes to testing, right? Test development, the tests are going to specifically test for something. And if your code isn't doing what they're testing for, you're gonna fail, right? Even though you might see the output is exactly what they're asking for, the way that it reads that output might not be the same way that the test is testing for. So you're gonna fail your test, right? So if you don't do it exactly how they're asking for you to do it, you might find yourself in a situation like, well, I wrote my program, it's visually it's giving me what I'm looking for, but it wasn't doing it how it should be doing it. So your test will fail. And I contacted TA. You'll be assigned a TA to your teams, or you will also have evening TAs or TAs that are on call during specific times in case students need help. They're not supposed to give you any help for the assessment, but you can ask general questions like, if I'm getting this kind of error message, what is this error message? Is it asking? Like, what is it asking from? Right. Anyway, so I get this TA, and he looks at my assessment. And he's like, okay, well, first and foremost, I'm telling you right now, you don't need this, that, and the third. All right, so you might as well just get this. And he's walking me through his stuff, like, this is why you're getting all these error messages. Like, you should not have any of this, right? So I go to delete him. About, 10 minutes in, he has to drop from the call because he had something come up. So where before I was passing like 7 test cases, now I'm passing 2. He essentially butchered my entire program, and I didn't know what the heck is what anymore. If I didn't know what was going on before, I definitely didn't know now. I started from 0. I restarted that assessment from 0 that Sunday afternoon, and I had to make sure it was, I completed, submitted by the next morning. But that point, I felt like I did not belong. Right? Like I should not be here. I can't even pass the first assessment. I should probably quit. You're gonna encounter a lot of points like that, especially when it's late at night and you just can't solve the solution to some problem that you might be encountering. But what you need to understand is, you guys do belong here, right? Guillermo doesn't just let anybody in, right? He wants to make sure that you have the basic requirements to make it through our program, right? He's really good at what he does. And he can understand if you have what it takes or the competency for, making it through our program. We do not try to fail you, right? You guys actually get multiple times or multiple tries to retake assessments, right? You have a TA that's assigned to you that will help you for hours, right? He is personally assigned to your group, and if you need help, your TA will help you. If the TA isn't available or he's busy with somebody else, the instructor is on call the entire day, and he'll help you out. They won't make classes over at 5:30. There's TA specifically assigned to provide evening assistance. So we provide you help along the entire way. So, at no point should you ever feel like I don't belong here and I should just quit, because we make sure that you are successful. And if you want the help is there for you. This is a picture of David Goggins. A lot of people don't like him because he's very cocky. But there was an interview with David Goggins, and they asked him, "How do you deal with imposter syndrome?" And he pretty much said, like, "I don't know what that is, right? Not me." All right, so embody that mindset, right? You belong here. It's not a mistake. Like, every single one of you guys can be successful. Install this. All right, cool. That completes technically lesson 0 for today. But we're gonna go ahead and continue moving on with lesson 1, which is talking about the terminal, Git, and GitHub. We'll get through most of this today. The terminal, right? Who knows what the terminal is? What is the terminal? A place where you can type commands that cause action, right? Technically, a terminal is a computer, right? It used to be like an actual computer that controls different things. You can type in commands, right? The terminals that we use nowadays, that's on our computers, they're technically emulators, right? Who's familiar with Pokemon emulators? Nobody. I'm the only freaking nerd in this call. Is that what I'm hearing? Nobody has ever used a Pokemon emulator. Okay. Well, you can install Pokemon emulators on your phone or on your computer, right? So you guys remember, the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, these old systems. Well, people were able to emulate these computers, right? Technically computers, right? Onto their own computer. They emulate how it worked, right? That's technically what our terminals are doing. They are an emulation of what used to be terminals, right? They also go by different names. They tend to be used synonymously. They're very interchangeable, but another name that you might hear is the CLI, right? The command line interface. Andy, he says Fallout Terminal. I see you're a man of culture. I appreciate that. But yeah, so your terminal is where you're going to do commands, write your commands. Everything that your computer can do can technically be done through your terminal, right? But the average person doesn't use the terminal. They use what we call the GUI, right? I'm sure most of you have probably heard this term before too, the graphical user interface, right? Because the average person doesn't understand what this is. They don't know terminal commands, how to navigate to the terminal. People might see this and they think of like hacking, right? I don't know why people think that. We think about hacking and stuff, or we think about hacker movies when someone like break into their firewall, whatever. They think like, I'm gonna mess up my computer by messing with this terminal, right? Not necessarily. It typically will just give you an error message because you gave it a wrong command. Right? And because people aren't knowledgeable in how to use a terminal, we have GUIs, right? Something that's a visual representation of pretty much what the terminal can do, but for your average day person, right? So we have pretty icons with pretty colors to help us navigate through the computer, right? So the average person can use a computer, and we're able to expand the audience when it comes to who can use computer and who can't, right? The GUI can do a lot of things that a terminal can do, but it's very limited, right? It's limited to however it was designed, right? We have different types of GUIs. Your browser is technically a version of a GUI, right? Zoom, the buttons that you have, any kind of program, the icons, your desktop, all these are graphical user interfaces that allow you to control different programs, different software. And the only limitation to GUIs is what was created for them. If there's not a button for it, it can't do it, right? If there's not a button to create a folder, then it won't be able to do it, right? Same concept. Whereas a terminal, it can do all this and more, right? You just need to know how to talk to it or talk with it. So They essentially do the same thing, but your command line interface, your terminal, can do a lot more, and it has a lot more power to it. It's a lot more powerful. You need to become very comfortable with the terminal. And we're going to get a small little demo into this. For those of you who have been taking part of the pre-work classes, this might seem very familiar. Just bear with it. For those of the people that haven't gone through it yet. Right? These are two different terminals that you guys might have, depending on whether you have Mac or you have Windows. Right? This is what it should look like. If you went to the install phase, you should see something like the user that you created as well as the name of your computer, right? It should be, if you go to the install phase, you're going to set a username. That'll be what's going to be added here to the left of the @ symbol, followed by the name of your computer. This is kind of what it looks like, right? So where does that name come from? That's a combination of your username and your computer name, right? And then it'll typically have like the file path, right? When you are at the root, right, at the top level of all your files, your directories, it's typically marked with this tilde, right, to let you know that you are at the root of everything. And from here, you would navigate into different directories, depending on where you're trying to go. Do I have any questions about the command line interface or GUIs before we move on? Right on. All right, follow along. All right, common terminal commands. I'm going to go ahead and pull this to the side, and I'm going to open up my terminal. If you guys want to have these commands pulled up, make sure you guys open up your slides. I'll walk through these in real time and see how they work on my computer. Right. So the very first one is going to be the PWD command, which you guys should have already seen earlier when I went through the demonstration. But the PWD command stands for print working directory. This is essentially telling you, like, where am I? Where inside of my folder paths, my directories, where am I located at here in this terminal? Right. So by typing PWD and pressing enter, it'll tell you your location. I'm currently within the home directory inside of Roger. Right. This is your folder or file path, right? So PWD, if you're ever wondering where on your computer you are at, this is the best way to figure out your location. The reason why this might come in handy is, as you guys saw earlier, when running a file, whether it's a JavaScript file or a Python file, you either want to be one or two things. One, you want to be in the same location as your file, or two, you need to be able to tell it where this file is located at and where and which one it should run, right? So it's very important to know where you are in your terminal at all times. Cool. So it's not directly in here. I know the next one on the slides is the mkdir command, but the next one I'm teaching is going to be the ls command, right? Which is the abbreviation for lists, right? The ls command is going to show you all the files within a directory, right? So as we already saw, the directory I'm in right now is Roger. And when I put in the ls command, it listed out every folder or file that is currently within the Roger folder, right? For those of you who are not tech savvy or, not that savvy with this terminology, directories is just a fancy word for folders, right? So if I say directories, if I say repo, these are all really just folders. They're just a fancy name for them, right? So a directory is a folder. So I'm currently within the Roger folder. And when I use the ls command, it listed out all the other files and folders within this Roger folder, right? And the reason why I cover this command is because it's going to lead me to the next one, which is making a new directory or creating a new folder. I like to use the ls command so I know where I'm at, like what the other folders in my area are before I start making folders, which is why I showed you the ls command. But to create a new folder within here, you're going to use the mkdir, which is the abbreviation for make directory. Right, this is the command you're going to use to create a new folder. And I'm going to call this example directory. Right, NKDIR space example directory. I press enter. What you also notice is that when working with your terminal and you put in a command, you're not always going to get something back, right? There's an absence of a response. No response is a good response, right? So just because it's not showing you anything on your screen, which you might be used to after running print statements or console.log using JavaScript, Python, you might have gotten accustomed to that. In your terminal, when you don't get a response, it doesn't mean that it didn't work, right? Typically, you won't get a response if it worked. So how do I see if it worked? Well, using the command from previous, the ls command, I'm going to list out all the directories and files once again to see what I have within this Roger folder. And I now see that the example-directory folder has populated within here. So I was able to successfully create a new folder. All right, awesome. Now, I have this folder, but I want to create a file inside of this folder, right? How do I navigate through my folders, right? The way that we are going to navigate, whether up or down, and I'll specify what I mean by that. The way I'm going to navigate into a folder is by using this following command, which is cd, which stands for change directory, right? I'm going to change directory. After the cd command, I want to specify the directory that I want to go into, and that's going to be the example-directory that I had created. I'm going to press enter, and notice that the file path here has now changed. I am now nested within the example directory, right? So that's what these forward slashes mean. It's telling you where you are inside of. I am inside of example directory, right? So I successfully changed the directory I was in and went down a level, right? I went down into the example directory. Now, what I mean by down into, TL draw. But what I mean is, when thinking about our file paths, we have, as you saw earlier, I had home, Roger, and in here I had different directories. I had Platoon, and I had example. Was that example? No, it was FOP, I think. I had two different directories, example and Platoon. These are the folders that were within Roger. I then created a new folder called, let me separate these in commas. Let me double check. Oh, my bad. It was ENVS. My apologies. It was Platoon, ENVS, and then I created a new directory called example-directory. Right? These are the folders located within this file path. Right? Now, if I wanted to go into the example directory, what I'm essentially doing is I am navigating inside of it, right? Which then gave me a new file path of example directory. So I dove deeper into my files. And really, I like to think of it as a tree or almost like a building. Right? You want to go deeper into your folder structure. So you start going down. Right? The top level is where the stuff begins. This is the root. But as I dive deeper into my folder structure, I'm adding more pieces to my file path to specify where I'm in. Right? I went inside Roger, and inside of Roger, I went into example directory. And as of right now, there's nothing within this folder. Right? But I did dive deeper into my folder paths, right? My tree structure of folders. Now, with that in mind, now that I'm within here, example directory, I want to, what if I decide to change my mind? I'm like, you know what? I kind of don't want to be in here. I want to come back up. How do I change the directory to go back a level? I was able to come down a level, but how do I go up a level? Well, we are going to, once again, use the cd command for change directory. But this time, instead of specifying a directory, I'm going to put 2 dots, right? So cd space dot dot, right? This is a command to go back up from whence you came, right? Now, when I use that command, notice that the file path has changed. I no longer have example directory. And if I list out everything I have within here, I am back within the Roger directory. All right, so I successfully went back up a level. Right, but that's cool enough. Let's go ahead and come back. Actually, let me go ahead and go into a different folder. I'm going to go inside Platoon, right? So I'm going to go cd Platoon. I'm going to list out what's in here. Okay, I have Platoon, and then I have 2 other directories within here. I have FOP and installfest. Let's go ahead and go inside FOP. Notice that as I dive deeper into my directories, it's adding more to my file path, right? /Platoon /FOP. It specifies the route that I took to get to where I'm at. All right, and then we have, if I list the directory within here, I have FOP summer 2025. I'm gonna go ahead and go in there. All right, cool. I'm gonna list out everything in here, and I see all the lessons from the curriculum. So my file path is pretty long, kind of, right? I'm inside Platoon, inside of FOP, then FOP summer 2025. Let's say I come in here, I do whatever I'm going to be doing, but now I'm going to go back up, right? You might want to use cd dot dot, but let's say you're like 10 levels down, you're really nested in some kind of directory. If you ever want to come back up without having to specify at every point how you got here, the command to go all the way back up to your root is going to be the cd tilde. cd tilde will bring you back up to your root directory or your home directory from where you first started. So you can go back up one by one, or you can use the tilde with the cd command and it will take you back up. All right. So we talked about making a directory, going into directories, or getting out of a directory. Now let's get into files. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back into my example directory that I created. I'm now within the example directory. Now, notice that my terminal is getting pretty crowded. I've made a bunch of commands, and it kind of gets a little difficult to understand what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clear my terminal. I want to wipe everything that I've been doing, so I have something to work with. The command for that is going to be clear, right? Pretty straightforward. I want to clear everything that I've done so far. And when I press enter, it's going to wipe all the different commands that I've used, right? But I'm still within the directory that I was nested in, right? It didn't change me from where I was at. It didn't send me back to my root directory. All it does is clear your terminal, cleans it up so you can work without all that clutter. Right. Any questions so far? Okay. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Awesome. Let's go ahead and continue moving on. So now that we have that, let's talk about files. So we are in the example directory. We know how to make a folder, but how do I make one file? To make a file, you do not use make file, right? You would think, because that's how the directory is done. To make a file, you use the touch command. I don't know why it is this way, right? It doesn't make any sense. You would think it would be make file, but it's going to be the touch command, right? To create a file, you're going to use the touch command and then follow it with the name of the file you want to create. I'm going to create example python.py. And it's very important that you end the file with what type of file it is, right? If it's a text file, end it with the .txt. If it's python.py, if it's a C#, CS, if it's JavaScript, JS, if it's HTML with the .html, so on and so forth, right? So whatever type of file you're trying to create, you want to end it with its suffix, I guess, the term. I don't know, English is my second language. Right? And now if I list out everything within the example directory, I only have one item in here, which is the example python.py file I created. Awesome. So the ls, as you saw here, is going to list out all the different files that I have in here. There is some additional functionality to the ls command, and I'm not the best at these, so we'll talk about them briefly. But what you can do is, instead of just using ls, you can put a space, and then if you use the -l, what this is going to do is going to show you all the files within the directory as well as some additional info. All right. And now half of this info, or actually most of this info, you'll probably never really have to see unless you're more the DevOps type of world. But what this is going to show you is when a file was created, the owner of the file, and the permissions of the file, right? So the RW and the dashes stands for who can read or write into this file, right? So typically, if you have like different users in your computer, like let's say you have a family computer and they have restrictions, when they create files on their computer, there might be certain restrictions that they can do, or certain things that they have access to. These are the restrictions that are applied to a file, right? You would typically never really have to mess with these ever. You might have to mess with these when you start going into deployment for your full stack application. But it's going to be very brief, and then it will be explained to you. To be completely honest, I don't remember the codes off the top of my head of which is which, so I'm not even going to get into it. As I said, you barely touch these ever doing full stack development unless you're doing like DevOps stuff. So you don't have to worry about memorizing what each one of these is doing. But I did want to show you that you can see some additional information in your files if you needed to. And then the next one is going to be the ls-l and then a. And this is similar to the -l command, but this was going to show you extra info as well as any files that are hidden. Once again, another command that you don't necessarily will be using ever, but it's just there so you understand that these exist, right? Expose you to this information. All right, let's go ahead and talk about deleting stuff, right? We created directories, we created a file, but how do I remove these? I'm going to clear my screen. I'm gonna list out the files I have in here. And I created the example Python file. Let's create an additional one. Example javascript.js. Oh, I didn't put the touch command. There we go. Got two files now. Let's say I created a file by accident, or there was a file that I no longer needed. It's irrelevant. If I want to remove this file, the command to remove this is going to be using the rm command, which pretty straightforward. It's an abbreviation for remove, right? And just like everything else, you're going to follow it with what you're trying to remove. I want to remove example underscore javascript.js. And now if I list out all my files, I see here that it is no longer present. So good to go. All right, let's go ahead, go back up a level. I'm back at my Roger directory. I have Platoon, envs, and example directory. I'm going to create another directory. I'm going to say example delete folder. I'm going to make a new folder that I'm going to use to delete a folder, right? If you want to delete a folder, right, not a file, there is a different way of doing it. And that's going to be using the remove method with the addition of the -r. If I remember correctly, the abbreviation for this -r means recursively. So the reason why we use this command after the remove method is because what might happen is you might have a folder with multiple different files within it, right? If you did rm example delete folder, you're going to get this issue we're gonna get error and it says you cannot remove it, right? Because it is a directory. And it doesn't know how to handle that. Because more than likely, you probably have other folders or other files within here. So it needs to know how to handle all the additional stuff that are within here. So they purposely add that flag of the -R for you to specify how to handle this directory. So if I want to remove the example delete folder, I will use the -R example delete folder. And now when I type in ls, I see that it is no longer present. Let me delete the other one. I'm pretty sure I can. Yeah, I could. All right, cool. All right. So if any questions or of any of the commands that we used here so far? Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Dominic, I'm assuming no. Okay, cool. All right, next commands. We're not going to do all of these. We'll talk about them very briefly. The next command you're going to see is going to be the sudo command. Right, the sudo command, you won't use it too much, but you will use it. The first time you're going to encounter it is going to be during the install fest. Right, the sudo command is pretty much like an all-powerful command. Right, it gives you the ability to overwrite restrictions and make your computer do something, whether it's install something or delete something. It stands for super user do. Right, super user do. Right. It's kind of like, when you run a file, you run it as an administrator. It's something very similar to that, right? It gives you like ultimate powers to kind of just force your terminal to do something. You'll see it during the install phase because you're going to force your computer to install certain things that you require for the install phase. Nothing worried about there, just basic stuff. You can, if you're worried about using certain installations of your computer, you can do your own research about that. But super easy to do, just overrides any kind of restrictions your computer might have to just go ahead and install it. All right, it gives you user root level permissions. The cat command, it lists, combines, and writes file content to standard output. Let me see if I can do an example of this. I don't use them too often either. Let's go with cats and then example.js. There we go. Okay, so the cat command allows you to read the content of a specific file from your terminal, right? So notice that I nested myself within my directories. I went into my FOP folder, FOP summer 2025, and I came into the lesson 00 directory for today. And if you guys recall from earlier, I create two files, example.js and example.py, to show you how we would run a file, whether they're one or the other, right? Now, the cat command, it allows you to read the contents of a file from your terminal. And it's as simple as using the cat and then the name of the file you're trying to read. Example.js. And you see here console.log, the hello foundations of programming. It tells you what was in there, and then it goes back to how it was before. All right. You won't find too much use of this during the immersive program, mainly for DevOps, but once again, exposing you to this content. All right, cool. Next, we're going to use the CP command. Who can guess what CP stands for? Correct. Copy. I'm going to go ahead and come back to the root. I'm going to copy this example directory. So I'm going to say copy CP. I want to copy example directory. And when you copy it, what you more than likely have to do is give it, a destination. Mason, this, yeah, I knew it. Okay, so I don't use this too often either. So I'm gonna copy example directory, and then you have to specify where you want to copy it. Actually, let's go to Platoon, cd Platoon, and here I'm going to copy the FOP folder to somewhere else. So I'm gonna say copy FOP, and I'm gonna say FOP dash copy, right? So you give it the name of what you're trying to create. Because it's directory, I require the dash R. There we go. And now see that I created a copy of the FOP folder, right? So once again, use the CP command to let it know that you want to copy something, right? And you require the dash R command, the recursive flag, to let it know how to handle the fact that this is a directory. Afterwards, you specify the folder you want to copy, and then followed by what you want to call this copy, right? And if I do ls FOP, and I do ls FOP dash copy, we'll see that they both contain the same contents. Right, so I can copy a folder, and you just saw me do something new. I did ls FOP, right? Not only can I use ls to list out the contents of the current directory I'm in, but I can specify to list out a directory I'm not within, right? So I was able to do that without nesting into a folder. I was able to just list out the contents of a folder from where I am at. Now, you guys don't have to, if you feel overwhelmed by all these commands, you do not need to memorize these commands yet, right? I'm exposing you to them. I will give you a rundown of the most common commands you would be using every single day, so you're aware of them. And those are the ones that you might want to start remembering. But for the most part, a lot of these commands, you won't really use them too often. So we talked about copying, but how do we move, right? How do we move stuff from a file, or what if we want to rename something? So I'm going to use the copy folder. And what I'm going to say is I want to change the name from FOP-copy to FOP-copy2. So the way that I do that is by using the MV command. Let me clear my terminal. I'm going to say MV, which stands for move. And then when you move a folder, you want to specify the folder you want to move. I want to move FOP-copy. And then I could do two things. One, I could rename it, or two, I can move it somewhere. Now, which one is the one that happens is going to determine on whether a folder exists, right? If I wanted to move the FOP copy folder inside of the installfest folder, I would specify installfest. And because the installfest folder exists, it's going to move it in there. But if you try to move it into a folder that doesn't exist, the behavior it's going to have is going to be a renaming behavior. So notice that here I specify a folder that does not exist, and then when I list it out, I now have the FOP-copy is no longer called that. It's now called copy-2. Now let me go ahead. I'm going to show you what happens if I move it somewhere else. I'm going to create a third copy for testing purposes. I have FOP copy-2 and FOP copy-3. I'm going to move this directory inside of this one. Well, just before I do that, let me see what's inside of copy-3. All right. Copy-3 only has the FOP summer 2025. Now, if I move the copy-2 inside an existing folder like copy-3, you'll see that copy-2 is no longer here. But if I list out copy-3, I will see that the folder has been moved into the -3 one. I hope I'm not confusing you with the naming of my directories, but essentially the functionality the copy method has, or I'm sorry, the move method has, is going to be determined by whether a folder that you're specifying already exists or if it doesn't, right? If it exists already, it's going to move it into it. If it doesn't exist, it's going to rename that folder to that folder. Make sense? All right. Let me go ahead and remove FOP copy that tree because I don't need it. Okay, this is a good time to show this. I tried to remove the FOP copy dash tree and look at the message that I got. It said remove write protected regular file, and it specified this, right? I tried to remove a folder that contained files that had protection properties on it, right? To prevent me from deleting it. How do I handle this? Let's say I really want to delete this. Your computer naturally tries to prevent you from deleting it if there's restrictions on it. But I'm aware of what's in here. I do not need it. I do not need it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to force my computer to delete this. How do I do that? Well, just like before, remove -R. The only addition here is I'm going to add an F to it. The F it stands for force. I'm going to force it to delete it. I don't care about the write protected functionality of the contents of my files. I don't need it. I know I don't need it, and I'm going to force it to delete it. I no longer get an error message, and I can now check the folders within here, and it's no longer present. So if you ever encounter a folder that you can't delete because it says it's write protected, you are able to force it. Just use it very sparingly. Make sure you don't delete something that you might actually need. Any questions? All right, the next one is not one that I use too often. It's going to be the find method. And this method is going to allow you to find a file somewhere. I'm going to use find, and I'm looking for print. Okay, never mind. I'm looking for find example. Okay, find FOP dash example. Okay, I'm not using it for stand by. I'm rusty on this one. How do I use it? Okay.
Try looking at the man page.
The what? I'm sorry.
Hit man find and it'll bring up the man page for it.
Man find.
And this is the how you use it essentially. It tells you everything about the command.
Okay, Justin, coming in here with some skills. Find, search for files in directory hierarchy. Okay, HLP. Press H for help real quick. Doesn't really give me too much. Okay, there we go. Not exactly what I was looking for. Okay. I think what I'm gonna do. All right, let's clear this out. I want to find inside of FOP example. Okay, there we go. That's giving me a lot of content. Might not be what I'm looking for. What if I do find FOP. I wonder if I can do hello, this is my Python file. No such file or directory clear. Find FOP. FOP-summer 2025. And then here I want to specify less than 00, and I want to find example. Okay. Find example, no such, is it because I need example.js? Stand by. What if I do dash name? There we go. Okay, let me clear this up. Let me remove all this, and let's just look through FOP. Right on. Okay, so there we go. Sorry, it took me a bit. I'm super rusty on this method because you don't use this often. But the find method, as you saw here, it's going to ask you, or you're able to ask it how to find certain things. Where I got this from, we have documentation that you can use, different websites. There's ever a something that you're trying to use, you can always find the documentation, whether it's Python. Geeks for Geeks is pretty good with it, but you can find ways of using it. But the find method is going to allow me to find a file somewhere in a directory. Notice that I didn't specify a file path. I just said inside of the FOP directory, right? Find, and then you specify the directory you want to search through. And then there's a flag you have to give it depending on what you're looking for. The flag that I used was the name flag. And you see here, dash name, and then you give it a pattern. So it searches for files by name, case sensitive, right? The tilde is the root, so it'll look through everything inside your root. So I could have done that, and it would have looked for everything called example.py like I did, or in this case, notes.txt. So if you know there's a file that exists, but you don't know exactly where it's at, you could use the find method to look for it, to keep you from going into different directories, changing back and forth. So it's a helpful tool. Personally, I don't find myself in a situation where I have to use it too often. I maybe used it once. And then I use it every now and then whenever I teach class. So some of these things, unless you use them often, you won't remember the commands. But this is something that is available to you. Then there's another method that we see here in our PowerPoint, which is a grep, which I believe is something similar to. Let me see if I can use the same syntax. I want to look for allows you to search by word or character match. I'm gonna look for example. But I expected way too much of myself. Let's see. The grep is a little bit more powerful than this. I'm going to look for this one. Should be grep. And it's not as straightforward as the find method. If you're going to be looking through a bunch of directories, you're going to want to use the -r flag, I believe. And I'm going to look for hello this, right? The start of this string right here. And I want to look through, yet specify through where, through home, through Roger. Let's see if I can find it. And it's taking a bit. Okay. There we go. So it did work. I specified through the Roger directory. Obviously, this is very top level. I didn't specify FOP, FOP summer. So I'm sure if I would have done this, like tilde, it would have probably looked through everything. But it only found 2 occurrences where it had the pattern of hello, comma, this. And it was correct. It actually got it from the summer 2025 directory at less than 0. I'm assuming this is looking through the data of my VS Code, which is where it found this, but this is not an actual file that I'm using. The actual file where this exists is actually the example.py file. So grep is a little bit more powerful, whereas the find allows you to look for certain files and directories. Grep, you can look through all the files inside of its content and look for specific keywords. It's almost like regex in a sense, right? If, for those of you familiar with regex, but with your terminal. So grep is another one that you might find useful. I don't find it useful too often because the work I do doesn't require it. DevOps, might be a little bit more useful than the immersive program. Time is 7:40. Let's go ahead and go in our last 10-minute break of the night. I'm going to pause. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and finish off the terminal, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a pause on lesson 1, so we can focus on install fest for those who haven't done it. So regardless, we're still good on time because tomorrow was supposed to be terminal getting GitHub, and we are already almost done with the terminal. Getting GitHub will take about an hour, hour 30. And then tomorrow we should be able to start the internet in HTML. But back from where we left off, we're just gonna go ahead and talk with what's the stuff that are left. We talked about find, we talked about grep, and here is, as you guys remember, when I talked about using the ls command and the -a, was it -a? I'm pretty sure, I don't remember the syntax. -l, -la. Okay, there we go. I mentioned changing the permissions on the files. Now, the actual method to do that is the chmod change. I don't know what this stands for, if I'm being honest with you. But this is how you would change the permissions. There's a code, for example, file permission code, change mod. If you want to look into it, there are specific ones, right? So each number represents something else, right? Having no access, only able to execute a file, writing only into a file. So each one of these codes, it means something different. So if you had to change their permissions on a file for whatever reason, this is how you would do that, right? You will use the chmod, and I don't think they have any, some sample code. But you could just simply Google it if you find yourself in a situation. The reason we're not going to dive into it is, for one, I'm not comfortable with it because I don't ever use it. And for that reason, you also won't ever really use it unless you are in a specific job that requires you to be messing around with file permissions. But just know that it's available for you. And you're also going to see this, it's going to be a very common trend that we might talk about some things that might not be something that you're going to do often, but it's to expose you on the fact that these things exist. And the reason for that is because software development, or honestly code in general, coding is such a broad spectrum, right? There are so many routes that you can go down. You can specialize in front-end development, right? That in itself requires its own different types of frameworks. Think about, you have HTML, JavaScript, CSS, you deal with stuff like React. There's other frameworks, but we're going to focus on React in here. For the backend, people specialize in nothing but backend, right? There's different languages for backend. There's object-oriented programming concepts that you have to go into. You work with Django. You start talking about databases. In the databases route, you might have a role specifically involving data, right? Data analyst, data scientist. You might find yourself as, in the DevOps route. You might end up, if you like to dabble in game development, you might use your coding skills to go into game dev. And then that in itself has different branches you can branch off to. You might be into working with robotics and using your code for those type of things. There's such a large web of different routes that you can go into, and what you're going to find is that you're going to end up specializing on one. To be fair, where you end up is typically going to be where you start. And the reason I say this is because when you try to break into the tech industry, especially when in times where tech is in a rough spot right now, you're gonna get what you can get, right? So people end up specializing on front end. Some people end up just doing back end. You might end up with a data analyst role, and then you venture into a more actual full stack oriented role. You might start as a business analyst and then change over to full stack or front end or back end, or you might end up as DevOps, even though you went through a full stack immersive program coding bootcamp, you somehow end up able to land a DevOps role. So typically what you'll find out is that the role that you start off in is typically what people end up staying on or specializing in. So software engineering, coding, computer science, these are such broad spectrums that you can go so many different routes that it is impossible unless you are, a computer yourself to know everything. There's no way, right? There's no way. You might be familiar with certain concepts, but there's no way that you're going to memorize and be good at everything. So the reason why you're going to see it's going to be a common trend for us to show you certain things that aren't necessarily so important right now, or they might not be something we're going to talk about deeply, is to show you, hey, these things exist. If you ever encounter a scenario, do you know that there is some way to do it and you can find the answer? All right. For those of you who made it in the military as an NCO, right? Whether you're a staff sergeant or sergeant first class specifically, or any rank, depending on what branch you were, right? Around that area, whether E6 and above, what you end up coming to find out is that as you moved up in the ranks, you go to leadership schools, right? So if you're in the Army specifically, I'm using because that's where I'm from. I'm gonna use that as an analogy, right? As you move up the ranks, you go to the leadership schools, you come to find out that you stop learning about your job and you learn more about how to find the answer. As a comm engineer, there were special things. There are certain things that we had to test out in. In the test during the leadership schools, really, they gave us a bunch of field manuals and they gave us a test. I had like 10 different field manuals opened up on different tabs, and it was a bunch of Control F to find certain keywords to answer the questions. You end up getting really good at finding the answer. And really, some of these roles end up kind of making you into it fits perfect into these type of roles because you end up with this mindset that if I don't know the answer, I'm gonna find the answer for you. So it helps you be able to research and leverage your tools like the documentation of Python itself, or the frameworks you're working with, or reading through Stack Overflow and different developers and their comments. So there's different routes that you might take. And your experience in the military is going to help you with that. But it's honestly just knowing how to find the answer, right? So although we're not going to talk about these or how these are done, just know that you can do it. So if you ever find yourself in a situation, you know how to solve it. The next one's going to be ping, not too helpful, but it does allow you to check if a network or server is reachable. I think I can ping Google. Ping Google.com. Yeah, I can ping Google, and you can see here that I am able to reach ping. I am able to reach Google. I can't think of a situation that's helpful because I've never had to use it, but ping is a method that's there. If you ever want to review your log of what commands you have used in the last hour, right? Let's say you're doing a lot of stuff on your terminal, and there was something specific, a command that you ran, but you don't know how you got there. You are able to use the history command. And it will return to you a history of all the commands that you've used, right, in order. So here's a helpful one. And then there is echo. Echo allows you to display a line of text using standard output. So echo hello, and it will literally tell you hello back. All right, so echo can allow you to do certain things like this. If you have Python installed, you can also open up a Python session, right? I can type in Python, and what you see here is that it starts a session of Python as well. And I'm able to save, it's like a shell, right? It's a Python shell that starts on your terminal. And I can write Python code here. Name is equal to Roger. Print name, right? Greeting is equal to hello. Print name plus, or I should just go print greeting plus space plus name, and you see hello Roger. So you're also able to open up a Python shell in your terminal and write out some Python code if you need to do that. So there's a lot of things you can do with your command line, right? So it's very important that you guys get comfortable with it, and learn some of these commands. Now, which commands you use, I'll tell you in a bit. Clear, we saw that earlier, you're able to clear out all the mumbo jumbo. So by the way, if you're in your Python shell in your terminal, you type in exit, open and close parentheses, and it closes out from there. But clear, as you saw earlier, it clears out all the extra stuff on your terminal to remove all that crowdedness, right? It gives you like a clean slate so you can work on. Tab, it auto completes. For example, I want to go into install this. I can start typing install and I'm able to press tab. And because there's only one install fest folder in here, it's going to be able to identify which one I'm trying to refer to. So tab allows me to auto-complete certain commands on my terminal. So it's very helpful, especially when you have like long folder names. Control C. Control C terminates a running command. And I'm going to use Python to show you, right? As you saw here, I was able to open up a Python shell by typing in Python. Control C allows you to, oh, it doesn't work for this one. My bad. Control C, you'll probably use it the most whenever you are running code and you end up with an infinite loop. If you ever find yourself on VS Code and you use a while loop or a for loop, and it's just like printing stuff out nonstop, and you want it to just stop because it's just overloading your computer, Control C will terminate any kind of command that is running. So that's going to be your baby here in the event you're running an infinite loop, or you are running your code and you don't want to continue running it, you just need to stop. Right? Control C is going to allow you to do that. Control Q, I've never used this one. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I don't even know the situation. Undo a terminal freeze. I'll give you guys more information on that one because I've never used it myself. Remove -RF. So I showed you this one earlier, right? When I tried to delete the FOP-copy-3 folder, I received an error message saying that there's permissions, there's restricted permissions on these folders, right? On these files, and I wasn't able to delete it. Well, you might encounter a situation like that, so you might want to force your terminal to delete something. As you see here, I need to warn you that you want to use this very sparingly to ensure you don't delete something that you might need. Justin mentioned Control plus A. Would you want to elaborate on Control plus A?
Yeah, Control plus A if you're typing out something and you want to go back to the beginning of the line. For example, if you want to do like a sudo command at the beginning, hit Control A and it'll take you back there. I use it a lot.
You see, I didn't know that. Thank you for that one. I actually found myself needing that today. Appreciate that one. Yeah, Control A. That's pretty cool. I'll definitely be using that often. And last but not least, it's the code command. So having VS Code on your machine, whenever you set up VS Code, for those of you who have not done install test, when you install it, there's going to be a couple things that's going to ask you to check, right? Some of these is going to be add VS Code to like your file path or like your folders to your file path. It's going to ask you if you want to use code in your terminal, I believe, if I remember correctly. You want to make sure that you have these boxes checked, because the reason is, the way it's going to work is, if you see here, I have the install fest. If I want to open this up in my VS Code, when I install VS Code, thanks to the settings I selected, I'm able to type in the keyword code, and then the folder or file I want to open up. And what it'll do is it will open up that folder or file within VS Code. So very helpful, especially when you're working with your terminal. This is how I opened up all my stuff when working with my VS Code. And it'll also work, if I close it up, it'll also work for a new file. For example, code example.py. It'll open up a new file exactly where I'm at in my directory. And you'll see here that it opened it up, but I want you to notice that it's not saved in here, right? So when you open up a file or folder, or specifically a file, in your terminal using the code command, and the file doesn't exist, it'll open it up in the VS Code in the same location that you called the command for your working directory, But if you want to save it, you have to come in here and just press Control S to save it, or manually save it by coming up here and saving it. So if you open up a file that does not exist, you need to save it so it does populate in your terminal or in that directory. Make sense? Notice here, do you want to save changes? I'm gonna say don't save. All right. This one should work if we did install fest correctly. If you have issues with using the code command, I'll help you guys after this next part. But this is the last slide for the Linux, practicing the Linux commands. So as I mentioned earlier, you do not need to know all these, right? I do not expect you guys to be subject matter experts. From top to bottom, everything in here except the ls-l and ls-la are commands you're going to need. You're going to use this every day. Every day in the immersive program, this first slide, minus these two right here, are going to be stuff that you need. So these are the ones that you want to memorize, and make sure that you annotate on your Enki if you're using those. But these are the ones that you want to be comfortable using, making directories or making folders, making files, going into the folders, getting out of the folders, removing folders and files, right? And then just being able to print where you're at. For the next slide, the only ones that you might use more frequently than the other ones will be the move or the copy. Sudo, you'll use it if you're installing stuff, but you're not always installing things. It's, you'll probably install things onto your Linux system when you do the install fest. It'll be the first time. The next time you might find yourself installing something using sudo might be when you install. Actually, that's it. I think everything should be installed with install fest. You might use it one more time during the immersive program, but the only other commands here in this slide that you're going to use frequently will probably be the copy or the move. The rest of these are nice to know, but you won't really need them too much. On the third slide, the ones you'll use often is clear. I use that all the time. All the time I'm using it, clearing out my terminal so I have something to work that's clean. Tab, I use that very often to help myself go through folders quickly. Control C, I use that often when I'm coding and I'm running stuff. If I end up with an infinite loop, or I need to terminate my code so I can go back and fix something. I don't use Control Q. I've never really used it, but everything except Control Q is going to be useful on the third slide. So really, the ones that you really want to pay attention is the first and the third, for the most part. These are going to be your babies right here. So which one do you need to know, Roger? These two slides. All right, so create an Enki deck, right? Very quickly, just add these and study them for a couple of days, and you'll be good. You'll get better with these as you work your terminal, right? So these will come naturally. You don't have to feel pressure like, oh no, I need to learn these now. As you find yourself in a situation that I need to go into this, how do I do it again? Just check real quick, and then with time you'll get better, right? And that's going to conclude the terminal lesson. We're still in lesson 1, but the next part is going to be Git, and I'm going to save this lesson till tomorrow before we start diving into this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop here. The remainder of the class will focus on the install fest. Let me go ahead and stop the recording.